Today, I am reviewing the Acer Predator gaming monitor. If at any time you'd like to explore this product for yourself and grab it at a great price, be sure to check the links below the video. If you have been waiting for the moment when OLED technology finally becomes the standard for competitive gaming, I think we have officially arrived, but there are some caveats you really need to know before you drop your hard-earned money on this Acer Predator X27U. I have been using this monitor for the past 3 weeks as my primary display for both competitive shooters and high-fidelity single-player titles, and while it is genuinely one of the most impressive panels I have ever sat in front of, it is not a perfect product for every single type of user. You can check the links below the video if you want to see the current pricing or explore the technical specifications yourself, but keep listening because the marketing materials often leave out the real-world quirks you only notice after a few dozen hours of use. Let's start with the elephant in the room, which is the picture quality. When you move from a traditional IPS or VA panel to this QD-OLED, the difference is immediate and frankly startling. The contrast ratio is effectively infinite, meaning that when a scene goes dark in a game like Cyberpunk or Alan Wake, the pixels actually turn off. There is no grayish backlight glow, no blooming, and no haloing around bright objects. It makes deep space scenes or dark dungeon crawls look absolutely incredible. The DCI P399% color gamut coverage is not just a spec sheet number. It is something you can see with your own eyes the moment you boot up a game. Colors are vibrant without looking oversaturated or cartoonish, and the factory calibration is surprisingly solid right out of the box. I found the skin tones and environmental textures to be very accurate, which makes this monitor a dual threat for people who want to game during the day and do some color-sensitive photo or video editing at night. However, the glossy finish on the panel is a double-edged sword. Acer opted for a glossy screen, which is great for perceived sharpness and color pop, but it is an absolute magnet for reflections. If you have a window behind you or bright overhead lights in your room, you're going to see them reflected in the screen, especially during dark scenes. If you play in a controlled environment with blinds or blackout curtains, you will love it, but if you have a bright, sunny home office, you might find the glare distracting. I personally prefer the glossy look because it makes the image feel like it is popping off the glass rather than sitting behind a matte filter, but it is a practical trade-off you need to be aware of before you buy. When we talk about the gaming performance, specifically the 240Hz refresh rate and the 0.03 milliseconds response time, this is where the Predator X27U really justifies its price tag. If you are coming from a standard 60Hz or even a 144Hz IPS monitor, the motion clarity here is in a completely different league. Because OLED pixels respond almost instantaneously, there is virtually no ghosting or motion blur behind fast-moving objects. In shooters like Valorant or Apex Legends, the ability to track targets while whipping your crosshair across the screen is noticeably better. You can check the links below the video for the full specs, but in practice, that 0.03 milliseconds response time is the real deal. It makes high-speed action feel crisp, and it significantly reduces the eye strain that comes from trying to focus on blurry, smearing images. The 26.5-inch size is an interesting choice. A lot of people are gravitating toward 32-inch 4K panels these days, but there is a very strong argument for the 26.5-inch 1440p form factor. At this size, the pixel density is high enough that the image looks sharp and detailed, but it is small enough that you can see everything happening on the screen without having to constantly turn your head. This is why eSports players have stuck to this screen size for years. It fits perfectly into your central field of vision, which is a massive advantage when you're trying to keep an eye on a mini-map or peripheral movement in a competitive match. I also want to touch on the build quality and the stand. Acer included a surprisingly robust stand that offers height, tilt, pivot, and swivel adjustments. It feels sturdy, and the base doesn't take up an excessive amount of desk real estate, which is a common complaint with some of the larger gaming monitors on the market. The ZeroFrame design makes the monitor look very sleek and modern, and since there are almost no bezels, it looks great in a multi-monitor setup if you happen to be running a secondary display alongside it. Connectivity is also well handled with 2 DisplayPort 1.4 ports and 2 HDMI 2.1 ports. This is a big deal if you are planning on connecting a console like a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X alongside your PC, as you'll get the full 1440p 120Hz support that those consoles can handle. Now, we have to talk about the inevitable downside of OLED technology, which is image retention or burn-in. Acer has built-in features to help mitigate this, like the image retention refresh cycles, and in my time testing it, I haven't seen any signs of permanent damage. However, if you're the type of user who leaves the same static desktop wallpaper on for 10 hours a day, or plays a game with a static HUD for years on end without taking breaks, you need to be mindful of that. This monitor is designed for people who consume a variety of media. If you are purely a spreadsheet warrior who works 12 hours a day with static windows open, an OLED might not be the best choice for you. But for a gamer who plays a mix of titles and watches movies, the risk is minimal as long as you use the built-in screen protection settings. Another thing to consider is the brightness. OLEDs generally do not get as blindingly bright as some of the high-end mini-LED monitors. In a dark or dimly lit room, The HDR performance is phenomenal because of the contrast, but if you are looking for a screen that will sear your retinas in a bright room, this might feel a little underwhelming. It is plenty bright for gaming, and the HDR10 implementation is solid, but don't expect the same peak brightness levels you would get from a dedicated HDR TV. You can explore the current pricing and the latest discounts through the links below the video, and I definitely recommend checking those if you are ready to pull the trigger, as the market for these panels fluctuates quite a bit. I also want to mention the text clarity. Some OLED monitors have subpixel layouts that make text look slightly fringed or blurry, especially if you're coming from a high PPI, IPS monitor. While the Predator X27U is much better than early OLEDs in this regard, if you do a significant amount of professional writing, coding, or reading, you might notice a slight difference compared to a high-end office monitor. It is perfectly fine for gaming and general web browsing, but it is something to keep in mind if your primary use case is text-heavy productivity. Is this monitor worth the money? If you are a competitive gamer who wants the best possible motion clarity and you also enjoy the deep, rich colors of single-player cinematic games, then yes, this is a fantastic investment. The combination of the 240Hz refresh rate and the OLED panel is truly the gold standard for gaming right now. You are essentially getting a professional-grade panel that handles motion better than almost anything else on the market. However, if you are a casual gamer who mostly does productivity work and you are worried about the longevity of the panel or the reflective surface, you might be better served by a high-quality IPS monitor, which will be significantly cheaper and arguably more practical for a general-purpose desk setup. I have found the menu system on this Acer monitor to be relatively intuitive, which is not always the case with gaming hardware. You can navigate through the settings to toggle the refresh cycles, adjust your colors, and manage the input switching without too much frustration. The inclusion of the USB hub functionality is also a nice touch for cleaning up your desk cables, and it is a feature I found myself using more than I expected to keep my mouse and keyboard dongles organized. In terms of disappointments, I would say the sound quality is what you would expect from built-in monitor speakers, which is to say, don't throw away your headphones. They are fine for basic system sounds, but you are definitely going to want a dedicated pair of speakers or a headset for any kind of immersive audio experience. Also, the power brick is fairly large, so if you're trying to keep your cable management ultra-minimal, you'll have to find a way to hide that under your desk. Ultimately, the Acer Predator X27U is a specialized tool. It is not trying to be everything to everyone. It is a high-performance gaming machine built for people who want to see their games exactly as the developers intended, with perfect blacks, vibrant colors, and zero motion blur. If that sounds like the experience you are looking for, it is hard to find a better option in this price bracket. You can check the links below the video to see the latest prices and read more about the user experience from other people who have picked one up. Just make sure you have the right environment for a glossy OLED panel, and you will likely be as impressed as I was. It is a premium piece of kit that brings a high-end experience to your desktop, and while it requires some care to keep it looking perfect, the visual payoff is well worth the effort for anyone serious about their gaming setup. If you have any questions about how it handles specific games or how the settings menu works, definitely take a look at those links, as the community discussions there often provide a lot of insight into the long-term reliability and specific settings tweaks that enthusiasts are using to get the absolute most out of this display. It has been a pleasure to use, and it is currently my favorite way to experience the latest titles.